I never thought I'd be sitting here, typing out this nightmare, but honestly I don't see any other way to get this off my chest. My name's Dave, and just a few days ago I thought I had the perfect life. A wife I loved, a job I enjoyed, and a circle of friends I trusted. That was until I found out she'd been lying to me all along. It all started with something small, something I brushed off at first. She'd been acting weird lately, more distant, avoiding eye contact, and suddenly she was obsessed with her phone. I'd catch her sneaking calls behind my back, her fingers trembling slightly when she thought I wasn't looking. I told myself I was overthinking. Maybe she was just stressed. But then, last weekend, I found the proof I'd been dreading. It was after we got back from a dinner with some friends. I noticed her purse was oddly heavy when she went to the bathroom. I didn't want to snoop, but curiosity got the better of me. I peeked inside and my stomach immediately clenched. There it was, a crumpled receipt, but that wasn't what made my blood run cold. Tucked beneath it was a torn piece of fabric, silk, soft and delicate, that clearly didn't belong to her. My palms went slick, my breath caught. I stared at the fabric, then looked at the receipt, which had a date and time I remembered. The night of our wedding reception. That fabric, it matched her dress from the reception. She'd been wearing this during our wedding, so how the hell did it end up in her purse? I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. My head spun. I held the fabric between my fingers, trying to process what I was seeing. It was unmistakable now. She'd been with someone that night, and not just anyone. I knew exactly who it was. My best man, Jake. The guy who stood right beside me when I said my vows. I felt my chest tighten and my stomach dropped like I'd swallowed a stone. How long had she been lying? How many nights had I gone to bed thinking I was married to someone I could trust, only to find out she'd been with Jake, my closest friend, behind my back? I didn't sleep that night. I kept turning it over in my mind, feeling the heat of betrayal burning through my chest. Everything suddenly looked different. Every glance, every word she'd said. I saw how she'd lied, how she'd manipulated me. This wasn't some random fling, this was calculated. She'd been sneaking around, hiding her affair and lying straight to my face. That's when I knew I couldn't stay silent. I had to do something. But what? Confront her, accuse her, or plan something else entirely? I wasn't sure yet, but I knew I couldn't just let this go. My mind quickly spun up a plan, one that would make her regret every lie, every betrayal. I started gathering evidence, a few more receipts, a photo I took of her phone when she left it on the table open with messages from Jake. I wanted her to see I wasn't just some naive guy who got played. No, I'd be the one to turn the tables. I'd make her feel how deep her betrayal cut, and she'd regret ever crossing me. The worst part. Every time I looked at her now, I felt a sick heat rise in my throat. The betrayal was so raw, so vivid, I could almost taste it. I kept asking myself, how did I miss the signs? Was I blind or just naive? I don't know, but one thing's clear: I was done being the fool. If she wanted to play that game, I'd make damn sure she paid for it. I still remember the moment I decided to act. The next morning, I went straight to my desk, pulled out my phone, and started planning. It was only a matter of time before she'd realize I wasn't the man to mess around with. I'd catch her off guard, and when I did, she'd wish she'd never crossed me. I could feel my jaw tighten as I thought about confronting her. My fists clenched on the table, cold sweat trickling down my back. She wanted to lie? Fine, but she'd regret it. She'd see who I really was, and I'd make damn sure she'd never pull this kind of stunt again. I don't have all the answers yet, but I do know one thing: this isn't going to end quietly. The pieces are all falling into place, and soon she'll find out what happens when you betray someone you're supposed to love. The question now is, what's my next move? I spent the next day walking around in a fog, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. I kept replaying that night in my head, her hurried whispers on the phone, the way her hand trembled when she touched her coffee, the faint scent of perfume that didn't match her usual scent. Every little detail clawed at me, making my stomach churn. It was like I'd been hit with a sledgehammer, and now all I could do was sit with the shock. I decided I had to get more concrete proof before I made any accusations. I couldn't just confront her on some hunch. I needed to know exactly how deep the betrayal went. So I devised a plan, a way to catch her red-handed or at least get her to slip up again. I've been thinking about what she'd been hiding, and I realized the best way to catch her was through her phone. That's when I remembered her password. I'd always known it. She told me once in passing, saying I'd never need to worry because she trusted me. Yeah, right. I'd never wanted to invade her privacy, but now I felt like I had no choice. I waited until she left for work then. I grabbed her phone from the countertop where she always left it charging. My hands were sweaty, but I was determined. I unlocked it easily. She'd been careless, maybe thinking I'd never look. As I scrolled through her messages, I saw the usual flirtatious texts, but nothing that screamed affair asterisk. Then I caught sight of a thread with Jake's short, clipped messages, but enough to tell me they'd been talking and coordinating. I copied some of the messages onto my phone, then quickly put everything back. Later that evening, she came home tired, exhausted from work. She sidled up to me on the couch, acting normal, too normal. I kept a steady face, but inside I was boiling. I knew I had her now, or at least enough to make her sweat. "Hey babe," she said, trying to sound casual. "Long day, huh?" "Yeah," I said flatly. "Listen, I've been thinking about us. About everything." She looked nervous but played it off with a nervous smile. "What do you mean?" I said, pulling out her phone. "I found some messages between you and Jake. Tell me what the hell's been going on." Her eyes widened and her face drained of color. "You went through my phone," she stammered. "I went through enough," I said, voice low and cold. "And I saw enough to know what's been happening. Don't pretend you're innocent." She hesitated, then broke down. "It's not what you think," she began, but I cut her off. "Oh, really? Because it looks pretty damning to me." I pushed the phone closer to her. "You've been lying for months. While I was working my ass off to build a life with you, you were screwing around behind my back. With Jake, my best man." She looked like she'd been slapped, her hands trembling as she tried to play innocent. "I didn't mean for it to happen. Save it," I snapped. "I've had enough. I'm done. I want you out of my house now, and don't think I'll forget this." Her face twisted with guilt and fear, but there was also a flicker of defiance. "You don't understand. It wasn't just I was confused. It didn't mean anything." I cut her off again. "That's bullshit. It meant everything to me. And now I know the truth. I've been blind. But no more. I'm not some fool to be manipulated." That night I packed her bags and told her to leave. I wanted her gone, but more than that, I wanted her to see what she'd lost. I sat in the living room, feeling the empty space where she used to be, fists clenched so tight I thought I'd break my knuckles. But I knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine, my dignity, my trust, my life. The worst part: the realization that I'd been a fool for so long, ignoring the signs. I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd turned around and betrayed me like I was nothing. That's what hurts the most, being played not just by her but by the person I thought I knew. Now I was figuring out my next move. I'd start dismantling her lies piece by piece. The evidence I'd collected was just the beginning. She thought she'd gotten away with it, but I'd make sure she paid in ways she'd never see coming. After all, what's revenge if not forcing someone to face exactly what they tried to hide? I looked out the window at the dark, silent street. My fingers itched to do something drastic, something that would shake her to her core. But I knew I had to be patient. The real game was just beginning. The question was, how much damage could I do before she even knew I had the upper hand? The first night after she left, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my mind: her lies, her betrayal, that damned fabric in her purse. It was like a heavy fog sitting on my chest, making every breath slow and ragged. I could still feel the sweat on my palms, the pounding in my head. My stomach churned with a mixture of rage and disbelief. I knew I couldn't just sit around while she moved on, probably laughing behind my back. No, I needed a concrete plan, something that hit her where it hurt, something that would make her regret ever crossing me. I'd been brewing ideas all day, and by nightfall I'd come up with a scheme. First, I decided I needed to turn her own game against her. She thought she'd gotten away with her secret, slipping out at night, texting Jake, hiding her affair. That was her biggest mistake. I'd be the one to expose her, but I had to do it carefully. I couldn't let her know I was onto her until I was ready. I started by setting a trap. I knew she'd try to contact Jake again, maybe to reassure him or make sure he hadn't blown her cover. So I created a burner account, something anonymous but with enough credibility to fool her. I'd send her a message, pretending I was Jake, to see what she'd say. It was simple. Just a quick note. Had a good time last night, we should do it again soon. I sent it that night, then sat back watching the clock. I knew she'd reply, that's exactly what I wanted, and by her response I'd know just how deep her lies went. If she played innocent, I had her now. If she admitted anything, well, I'd be ready for that too. Sure enough, within minutes her phone buzzed. I was hiding just out of sight, pretending to be asleep in the other room. I heard her pick up, her voice tense but quiet. "Who's this?" she whispered. There was a pause, then she responded, "Jake." I nearly smiled. She was falling for it. She didn't even question the message. Instead, she replied quickly, "Can't talk now. Meet me at the park tonight, same as always." That was enough. I'd caught her red-handed, but I still needed to be cautious. My plan was to keep the heat on, keep her thinking she was caught but unaware of how much I truly knew. I wanted her on edge, paranoid enough to slip up further. The next step was to gather more evidence, more proof of the affair, something that would make her regret ever crossing me. I started monitoring her movements, watching her schedule, tracking her calls. I even set up a small hidden camera in the living room, not to spy on her in a creepy way, but to catch her in the act if she tried to sneak back in or meet Jake again. All the while, I stayed calm on the surface. Inside, I was seething. Every time I saw her number pop up on my phone, my heartbeat quickened. I kept telling myself I was doing this for justice, that I deserved the truth. But deep down, I knew I was also playing a game, a dangerous one. That night I waited in my apartment, a sense of anticipation building. I had the camera rolling, my phone in hand, ready to record. The minutes felt like hours as I watched the door. Then it happened, footsteps, quick and deliberate. She slipped inside, trying to be sneaky, but I could see the nervous twitch in her shoulders. I didn't say a word. Instead, I hit record. She was so tense, looking over her shoulder like she expected someone to jump out. She hurriedly removed her coat, then froze when she saw me sitting there watching her. "Hey," I said, voice steady. "You've been busy, huh?" She tried to act casual, but her hands trembled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do," I said, clicking on the camera app. "I've got everything here, the messages, the receipts, the recordings." Her face went pale. "I can explain." "No need," I interrupted. "You've been lying to my face for months. While I was working, building a life, you were sleeping with Jake. How many times?" She looked down, silent for a moment, then whispered, "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to get this far." I felt my jaw tight. "A mistake, that's what you call it. You betrayed everything we had, and I'm supposed to believe this was just a one-time slip-up." She looked like she wanted to say more but couldn't. Instead, she just looked away, defeated. I knew then I had her cornered. The evidence was irrefutable. I got up slowly and stared right into her eyes. "You've ruined everything, and now I'm done playing nice." I handed her the keys she'd forgotten she was holding, cold and heavy, in my palm. "Pack your things, leave tonight, and don't come back." She looked at me, tears brimming, voice trembling. "Please don't do this, we can fix it." I shook my head. "No, we can't, and I won't be your fool anymore. Goodbye." As she left, I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. The weight of betrayal had finally lifted, but the scars would stay with me. I knew I'd probably never fully trust anyone again, but right now, I was just glad to be free of her lies. The truth is, once someone crosses the line like that, everything changes. You realize how fragile the foundation of trust really is, and how revenge, when done right, can be the only way to reclaim your dignity. That's what I learned. The house felt eerily silent after she left. It was like the walls were holding their breath, waiting for something, anything, to fill the emptiness she'd left behind. I sat on the couch, staring at the spot where she'd been just hours earlier, my mind racing through everything I'd just done. Part of me felt numb, part of me was furious, and another part was strangely relieved. But mostly, I knew this was just the beginning. In the days that followed, I kept my cool on the surface, but inside, I was brewing something more calculated. The evidence was in my hands, yes, but I needed to make sure she understood the damage she'd caused, not just to me, but to herself. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal crushing down on her, like I'd felt when I first found that fabric and those messages. I needed her to see that she'd lost everything in a single moment. So I devised a plan, a way to make her regret every sneaky lie and every secret rendezvous. No violence, no overt acts of revenge, just a slow, deliberate dismantling of her reputation. I wanted her to know that I wasn't just the betrayed husband. No, I was something much more dangerous now. The man who fought back with a precision she never saw coming. I started by reaching out to a few of my most trusted friends, people who had always been loyal to me. I told them the truth, well, enough of it, and asked for their support. I needed witnesses, allies, someone to back me up when I finally confronted her again, face to face. Some hesitated, a few were surprised, but all understood that I'd been played for a fool and that I had every right to be furious. Next, I turned my attention to her reputation. With her job, her friends, her social circle, I started planting subtle seeds, little hints that would make her look less innocent. Not full-on accusations, but enough to make people question her words. That meant I started dropping comments in conversations, sharing snippets of her behavior, and even hinting at her habit of sneaking around. It was calculated, cold even, but I needed her to feel what she'd made me feel, exposed, vulnerable, and betrayed. Meanwhile, I kept the pressure on her by sending her small, cryptic messages. Not aggressive, just enough to keep her anxious. People are starting to notice, I'd say, or you're not as clever as you thought. I knew she was checking her phone constantly, trying to find out if I was doing anything more. That's when I hit her with a final, calculated move. One evening, I sent her a message, pretending to be someone else. A fabricated account with a fake profile. I told her I was a friend of Jake, someone who knew about their secret meetings. I played it cool, but I made sure she felt the sting. I told her I overheard her talking, that I knew everything and that I was going to tell everyone. Her response was immediate, panicked, desperate, full of excuses. I kept the conversation going, giving her just enough rope to hang herself. I wanted her to slip. I wanted her to make a mistake. Finally, I dropped the bomb. I know about the affair. Everyone will know soon enough. That was the moment I saw her unravel. Her reply was a frantic string of apologies and denial, but I'd already recorded everything. The messages, her voice in the background, the lies she'd spun. The next day, I handed the evidence over to a few mutual friends I trusted. I made sure they saw the truth with their own eyes. I wanted her to realize that she'd lost not just her marriage, but her reputation too. I didn't want to ruin her, not in a malicious way, but I needed her to feel the real consequences of her betrayal. And here's the thing, it worked. Over the next week, I watched her face the fallout. Friends pulled away, her social life crumbled, and her job started to look at her differently. She tried to deny everything, but the truth was out now, and no amount of lies could undo it. That's when I knew I had succeeded in my quiet, calculated revenge. I'd made her feel exposed, like she'd made me feel. I didn't need to scream or shout. All I had to do was let the truth do the heavy lifting. And as I stood on the sidelines watching her unravel, I finally felt a faint sense of justice. But I'll admit, it's not all satisfaction. It's a strange thing, revenge. It's like a bitter pill you force yourself to swallow because it's the only way to get some semblance of control back. I realized that I'd been so focused on punishing her that I'd almost forgotten what I truly wanted: peace. A future free of lies. One where I could rebuild from the ashes of this disaster. That's the lesson I'd tell anyone in my shoes. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a shouting match or a punch. It's making sure the other person feels the full weight of their betrayal slowly and without mercy. Because in the end, the truth always comes out. And when it does, the fallout is yours to decide. The fallout was everything I imagined and more. Her phone, which once buzzed with flirtatious messages, now sat silent. Her friends, colleagues, and even some family members started to distance themselves. I could see the whispers behind her back, the sidelong glances she couldn't ignore. It was like watching a slow-motion crash. You know it's coming and you can't look away. I'd spent days carefully orchestrating her downfall, and now the pieces fell into place. I never wanted her to think she'd gotten away with it, and I certainly didn't want her to believe I'd gone soft. No, I wanted her to understand the gravity of her betrayal, that her actions had consequences, and I was the one delivering them. One evening, I decided it was time to have the final confrontation. I called her calmly, but with enough edge to make her nervous. She answered, voice trembling, trying to sound composed. "Look," I began, "I've had enough of the games. You lied, cheated, and manipulated, and I've documented everything. I have proof, evidence that I'm sure you don't want everyone to see." There was silence on the line. Then she whispered, "Please, Dave, don't do this. We can talk." I cut her off sharply. "No, I don't want to talk anymore. I want you to hear this." I paused, letting my voice deepen. "You've ruined your reputation, your marriage, and probably your career. I've handed everything over to the people who need to see it. You're done." She broke into tears. "I swear I'll do anything, just please don't ruin me." I felt nothing but cold certainty. "Ruin you? No. I just made sure you'd face the consequences of your actions. You lied, and now you're paying for it. It's over." She begged, pleaded, even tried to make excuses, but I knew I'd already won. The damage was done. Her world was crumbling around her. She was the one who had to pick up the pieces, her credibility shattered, her reputation in tatters. After that call, I decided I had to make the final move. I went to her apartment, the one she'd vacated in a rush, and gathered her things. I didn't throw her stuff out in anger. I just packed it neatly into boxes, ready for her to take. I wanted her to leave with nothing but what was hers. Then I drove to her workplace. I handed her boss an envelope filled with the evidence, screenshots, recordings, everything. I told him she'd been involved in an affair, that her integrity was compromised, and that she'd be stepping down. I didn't want to ruin her entirely, but I wanted her to understand what she'd lost. Just as I was walking away from her office, I saw her standing there, eyes red and swollen. She looked exhausted, defeated in a way I'd never seen before. That moment I felt a strange mixture of triumph and sadness. She made her choices, and now she had to live with the fallout. Leaving her behind, I felt lighter than I had in months. I'd taken back control, reclaimed my dignity. The chaos, the lies, the betrayal, they had all led to this. I'd done what I needed to do, but the aftermath was messier than I expected. My friends, my family, even some colleagues started asking questions. It was inevitable. I could see the judgment in their eyes, hear the whispers when I entered a room. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part was exhausted from the emotional toll. I realized that revenge isn't a clean, tidy thing. It's a messy, raw process, like ripping off a Band-Aid that stuck too many times. It leaves scars, and sometimes those scars hurt more than the original wound. I had to remind myself, this wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about regaining my sense of self. Now I'm trying to rebuild, slowly. I've started therapy, talking through the pain, the betrayal, the anger. I'm learning to trust again in bits and pieces, but I know one thing for sure. I took back my life. I handed her the final blow, and honestly, it feels like a weight has been lifted. To anyone out there in a similar situation, know this. Revenge is a double-edged sword. It can give you control, but it also leaves scars. Be sure that what you're fighting for is worth the cost. For me, the truth and my dignity were worth every moment of pain. And now, I finally feel like I can breathe again. In the aftermath of everything, I've realized something crucial. Trust, once broken like that, is almost impossible to fully restore. I've spent weeks trying to piece myself back together, but there's always that lingering doubt. Still, I've come to understand that reclaiming my life was the only way forward. The betrayal burned deep, but I refuse to let it consume me entirely. Every day now feels like a small victory. I hand over the keys to the house, the place that had become a symbol of my shattered marriage. I signed the papers, watching her name leave the title, and felt an odd sense of relief. That chapter was officially closed. I walked out of that office knowing I'd taken back what was mine, my dignity, my peace, my future. I remember holding the envelope with all the evidence I'd gathered, screenshots, recordings, confessions, and feeling a strange calm wash over me. The worst parts of the story are behind me now. I'd fought hard to keep my self-respect, and I did it without stooping to her level. I didn't need to shout or shame her publicly. I just let the truth do the heavy lifting. As I handed over the keys and walked away, I knew I was finally free. free from the lies, the betrayal, the painful illusion that I had built around us. I wasn't just ending a marriage. I was ending the betrayal that had poisoned my life for too long. It's not an easy road, but it's the only one that leads to healing. Looking back, I see how much I've learned. Revenge isn't just about punishing someone else. It's about reclaiming yourself after someone tries to destroy you. It's about standing up when everyone else expects you to fold. And it's about knowing when enough is enough, when you've made your point and it's time to move on. I'm still healing, still rebuilding, but I've learned that the most powerful revenge is living well without her, showing strength when you're hurting the most, putting your own well-being above the chaos. That's what finally set me free. To anyone reading this and going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the red flags, no matter how convincing the lies. Gather your evidence, plan your move, and take control of your story. Because in the end, the only person responsible for your happiness is you. I'm not perfect and I still have scars. But I know now that I'm stronger than the betrayal. I've reclaimed my life and I'm finally ready to move forward. Every step away from her is a step closer to peace, real, lasting peace that no betrayal can shake. And that, I believe, is the greatest revenge of all.